Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of your favorite podcast, The Fantasy Birds. We are ramping up our coverage heading into the fantasy football 2021 season, just a couple months away, getting you the information you need to make decisions in your drafts. Today, we got 5 must-avoid players heading into your drafts that we want you to keep an eye out for. Not guys we totally hate, but just guys based on where they're going in drafts, their ADP, average draft position. We're not in love with where they're going. So let's run the tape. The first guy I want to talk about today is Jonathan Taylor, JT, for the Indianapolis Colts. Look, Jonathan Taylor, absolutely breakout into the 2020 season, ended up as RB5 in half PPR scoring. Absolutely insane. Let's pump the brakes on Jonathan Taylor. He's going as the number 7 running back in redraft leagues. This is way too high for me in the first round for Jonathan Taylor, a guy who's going to see another committee role this year for the Colts. Look, Marlon Mack tears his Achilles. He's coming back. Nyheim Hines, Jordan Wilkins, all these guys are going to be competing for snaps and carries. Just like they saved Jonathan Taylor for the end of the season heading into playoffs, we expect that to happen again this season. 8 games last year from Jonathan Taylor with 13 or fewer carries. That's not a running back I want in the first round. The upside there is very limited, splitting the carries with those 3 other running backs. In addition, Phillip Rivers, a quarterback last year. Now we got Carson Wentz. That's going to limit some of Jonathan Taylor's touchdown upside. As Carson Wentz, we've seen, likes to get out of the pocket, likes to scramble into the end zone, still limiting that upside for Jonathan Taylor. Also, last year, the last 5 games is really where he made his mark on fantasy football standings. The last 5 games were against some piss-poor defenses. Let's just be totally honest. It was against Green Bay, 2 against Houston, Las Vegas, and Jacksonville. Jacksonville, keep in mind, was the last game of the regular season, and a loss for the Jaguars solidified their spot to number 1 in the draft to get Trevor Lawrence. So I don't think stopping Jonathan Taylor was number 1 on the priority list going into the game plan that week. So I'm pumping the brakes on Jonathan Taylor as a first-round running back, and I think he's a must-avoid considering how high people are going to have to draft him to get him on your team. Second guy on our list today is going to be Kenny Golladay, moving from the Lions to the Giants. And it's really nothing has to do with Kenny Golladay while we're off on him this year. Look, coming from Matthew Stafford, Detroit Lions team, always down, always throwing the ball, and no one really there to supplement targets for Kenny Golladay. Marvin Jones, the number 2 wide receiver there in Detroit. TJ Hockenson, Marvin Jones, Kenny Golladay, the only guys there for Matthew Stafford, so he got fed the ball consistently. Big jump ball guy, big touchdown guy for Matthew Stafford, but he's going to a Daniel Jones-led offense. And Daniel Jones, a season ago, yes, he did miss a couple games with injury, but less than 3,000 yards passing last year for Daniel Jones. That kind of volume is not going to lend itself favorably to Kenny Golladay this year, especially when you consider the Giants' new additions to the team. Kadarius Toney from Florida, Slayton and Shepard still on the team, along with Ingram at tight end. Saquon Barkley coming back at a feast in the red zone. It's going to limit Kenny Galladay's touchdown upside. Just too many mouths to feed for that New York Giants offense. And Kenny Golladay still going 4th, 5th round, just way too high on me this year. I'm avoiding Kenny Golladay for the price that I'm going to have to pay to get him this year. Next guy on our list here, Chase Edmonds for the Arizona Cardinals. Everyone wants to say Chase Edmonds is a big blow-up breakout candidate this year, now that Kenyon Drake's out the picture. But what do? They bring in James Conner. Not that James Conner's any good. I mean, we saw him in Pittsburgh. They had Big Ben throwing it 50 times a game because James Conner couldn't run the ball. But Chase Edmonds showed last year, even when he was given the starting role when Kenyon Drake was out with injury, he averaged 9.5 fantasy points per game in that short time. So he's shown that he cannot be the workhorse back. He's not built to be the workhorse back. He's that change of pace guy. In addition, Kyler Murray's shown that he's going to scramble in the red zone like we talked about with Jonathan Taylor and Carson Wentz. Kyler Murray's ability to run the ball in the red zone, get those touchdowns, going to limit Chase Edmonds and James Conner's upside. And I mean, I'm not too worried about James Conner this year in fantasy either. I'm not in love with him, but Chase Edmonds, I'm not feeling the breakout potential like a lot of people are. I think he's going pretty high in drafts. I think he's more of a handcuff if one of those guys to go down to be a flex play. Nowhere near RB1 if he's the starting running back. We've seen it. He's just not built to handle that workload. Chase Edmonds, a guy I'm not paying the price to get him this year. Next guy I want to talk about is fan favorite Leonard Fournette. I hate to see him on this list being from the boot, but coming off that Super Bowl win, playoff Lenny, everyone is drinking the Kool-Aid on Leonard Fournette. But what did we see last year in the regular season? Only 3 games the entire season with over 13 fantasy points. That is ridiculous. Playoff Lenny, yes, he did contribute a significant amount to that playoff run for Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, but not really fantasy-wise. Ronald Jones is still the lead back for them. He's the grinder. He's the guy that they're going to hand the ball off to wear down the defense. In addition, Leonard Fournette was really the receiving back kind of change of pace for this Buccaneer team. And what did the Buccaneers do in the offseason? They needed a receiving back because Ronald Jones can't catch the ball, can only really run straight forward as we saw last year. But bringing in Gio Bernard from the Bengals, really going to be that third down running back. He's good in pass blocking, so he's going to stay on the field for third down. And I think he's going to limit Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones' upside. He's going to be taking away a lot of that, what LaShawn McCoy really they wanted from him last year. But LaShawn McCoy was clearly toast from the first game he stepped onto the field. But Gio Bernard got some left in the tank, going to limit upside on Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones. And that's why I'm staying away from this Tampa Bay backfield that did provide some fantasy upside last year. The last guy on our list today is going to be Will Fuller, now in the Miami Dolphins, coming from the Houston Texans. What a shit show that team is. But Miami Dolphins coming off a PEDs riddled year for Will Fuller, his best year of his career. I guess there's no coincidence there, juiced up. But everyone wants to see Will Fuller coming with that Deshaun Watson. He was really Deshaun Watson's only target outside of Brandon Cooks later in the season. But Will Fuller really, he made some money last year with how he played. But he is suspended for the first week of the season. Let's keep in mind, Will Fuller, he's a big name in fantasy, but he has never been over 1,000 yards in his career receiving in a year. He had his career year last year, and he only went for 800 receiving yards. So other than that, no years even over 700 receiving yards. And he goes to a Miami Dolphins team that wants to play defense and run the ball with Coach Brian Flores. I'm not seeing Will Fuller's upside this season. There's a lot of mouths to feed for this team. Jalen Waddle coming to the team, Devontae Parker, Mike Gesicki. I think there's too many mouths for Tua Tagovailoa. Not a lot of volume there. Tagovailoa last year averaged about 200 yards passing per game. That could definitely improve with his development coming from rookie season, sophomore season. But still, Will Fuller is just kind of a deep threat. Without Deshaun Watson really running around the field, tossing bombs to him, I'm not seeing the upside with Tagovailoa this year. Will Fuller, I'm out on him. His price has increased significantly based off last year's PEDs here, but no more roids in him. I'm not buying him this year. Will Fuller out. But those are the top 5 guys that we are looking to avoid this year in fantasy football. We thank you guys for watching. See you guys next week with another episode of your favorite podcast, The Fantasy Birds.